Oh, good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name is Tom Luongo. Hope you're all having a great evening. Sorry I'm a little late. The wife and daughter were watching the Grand Tour. I did not have the heart to tell them to turn it off 7 minutes before it was finished. So I had to wait. Just the way things are sometimes. All right, so before we get started, a little housekeeping while we wait for people to get into the chat for the evening. You can follow my work over at tomluongo.me. You can also follow me on Twitter, TFL1728. And you can support my work over at Patreon at patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns. We do this every Friday night at 8:30, plus or minus 5 minutes, because, well, you know, I'm no professional. Or Monday nights at 8 p.m., which generally will be on time because the wife and daughter aren't home at 8 o'clock on Monday nights. So, to, you know, make things. So it's funny. Before we get started, I don't know if you guys are a fan of Mike Rowe or not. Before we get started talking about, like, geopolitics and all this other stuff. It's just funny. Last couple of days, I reminded myself just how much fun I find listening to Mike Rowe talk. If you guys don't know who Mike Rowe is, we're talking about the guy from Dirty Jobs and his Micro Works Foundation and all that stuff. But Mike Rowe does this thing called That's the Way I Heard It. And it's his Paul Harvey kind of shaggy dog stories about various important moments in history. And Mike Rowe is a hell of a storyteller. One, frankly, I wish I was as good at. And if I actually worked at that as opposed to all the other things I do, then I may, you know, gradiate up to Mike Rowe levels of storytelling ability one of these days if I actually worked at it. I'll never have the voice, mind you, because, well, I'm nasal, I'm Italian, and I'm from New York. But I have to say, Mike Rowe it's damn good stuff. If you've not watched him do That's the Way I Heard It, good stuff. Stories are great. The presentation is excellent. And shameless plug. Big fan of Mike Rowe. All right. At least that's the way I heard it. So now that we've got some people in the chat, let's get started. Yeah, he did some time with the opera. No, he wasn't actually any good at being an opera. He just wanted to be an opera because he was chasing a girl and didn't kind of work out. But it was funny. His story on that stuff is really funny. If you've never, ever watched Mike Rowe's, like the YouTubes of Mike Rowe on QVC, that's high comedy. Just, that's high comedy. All right, what do we got? So, excuse me. That's going to happen on and off for the rest of the evening because I'm still getting over this thing that refuses to let go of me. At a certain level, I almost feel like there's an alien crawling out inside my chest, and I can't seem to get rid of it. All right. So, and if it's, you know, laying eggs in my chest and it's going to, you know, explode out my stomach one of these days, well, then you'll know what happens when I'm late one night. All right. So let's do it. So let's talk about Europe. Been talking about Europe and Brexit and everything, because by Tuesday we're going to be dealing with the potential. We're going to be into the final act of the How to Portray Brexit in 75,000 Easy Steps by Theresa May. We'll be at step 74,999. So it's pretty obvious. I did a short live stream this afternoon, did a short news on this afternoon about how May is finally taken the mask off. That she is, without a doubt, now trying to destroy Brexit. I don't know that was ever really in doubt, but I entertained the possibility for a few weeks that she might not have actually been working for the EU. And it's pretty clear now, because she's now given the ultimatum that it's either her deal or no Brexit. And she's not even a respectable supervillain. No, she really isn't. And that's the funny part about this, is once she should have never done that. She should have left there. She should have left it for some. She should have left it in such a way as to leave us some doubt as to whether or not she was trying to destroy Brexit or not. Because now that you know how to destroy her, now you have the game plan to run her clock out, on her. The ERG group and the Brexiteers within government is they have all the power now, even though it doesn't look like it. There's even odd chance that they're not going to leave on the 29th of March, given the situation. But there's no legal way to extend Article 50 beyond right around the middle of April. And of course, all of this technical and legal stuff, all of this kabuki theater about how they're going to stop Brexit, leaves aside the most important point. Yes, the EU is desperate, and their stalking horse May has now panicked. Philip Hammond, she should have left it in the hands of guys like Philip Hammond and Amber Rudd and the rest of them to let them do the dirty work. The fact that she came out and did this tells you two things. One, that the EU has a real problem. They can't go for an extension to Article 50 because they know someone will vote against it. And it only takes one. Would it be Matteo Salvini? Would it be Viktor Orban? Would it be the Lithuanian chick who said back in December, I will not vote for an extension on Article 50? Be Poland. The reason, and that's what they're most worried about at this point. So they have to go for the fear. And whenever somebody gives you two choices, you know they're lying to you. Theresa May, up until this morning, didn't really give anybody an ultimatum. She kind of talked around it. She said, look, give me a deal that I can go back to Brussels with. I would rather us leave with a deal. Yes. But if we have to, I'm not going to take no deal off the table. But does anybody really believe that anymore? No. Why? Because there'll be no Brexit if they don't vote for her deal. Now, is that her just stating the political reality of the day? Or is that her panicking? I think it's their panicking, because the truth of the matter is, as everybody, as we have talked about on the show multiple times, it took an act of parliament. It is a law. Article 50 is an act of parliament. It is a law. 29th of March, 11 p.m., they're out of there. It'll take an act of parliament to negate that. I don't think they have a majority to get that done. Because what they never counted on, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, they never counted on was the British people hardening politically against their shenanigans. So there are many MPs who don't want Brexit, but want to keep their jobs more. And there's only so many ways you can twist somebody's arm when their personal interest is at stake. So, what's going to happen in 3 weeks? I don't know. But if they extend it beyond around April 13th or April 14th or so, if they actually go for that, the game's over. Because there's no way to stop Article 50 at that point. Because here's the gig. The EU will be in violation of its own rules because the UK will still be in the EU, but they won't have any representation in Parliament. Because if they extend it beyond April 13th, there's this whole conundrum that they try to go to June 29th. They still won't be able to seat new MPs because they won't be members of the union. So, and that's the German legal counsel gave to Angela Merkel. They all know this. That's why they've panicked. That's why we are where we are. And part of me really does believe that this is what happens when you overplay your hand. They overplayed their hand against Viktor Orban, telling him, we're going to throw you out of the European People's Party. Orban just turns around and says, you guys keep doing what you're doing, you're going to break up the EU on your own. Matteo Salvini in Italy is making it abundantly clear that he's on Brexit's side. And he's going to go to the mat against the EU in order to get them to reform. They want his vote on this to extend Article 50. They're going to have to give Italy everything he wants. And even then, they'll still be in violation of their own rules relative to membership and the MPs and all of that stuff. So, it's really funny. Oh, on top of everything else, the Irish backstop is completely and utterly illegal. It contravenes no less than like 4 different treaties. I was reading an article over at the Bruges Group this afternoon. They just went through a chapter and verse. Most of these chapter and verses I don't understand, but I don't have to understand. Everybody knows it. The backstop is illegal. It's why it's in the political declaration and not in the withdrawal agreement itself. Is Italy trying to get kicked out of the EU, or is he playing for a deal? Both? Either? I just know that Salvini has all the leverage. Remember, when you owe the bank $1 trillion, it's the bank's problem. What is the Irish backstop? The Irish backstop is to say that they will the UK will stay in the customs union and in the tariff treaty and the single market in order to keep the Irish border, Northern Ireland border open. It's the only way it will work. But the way the withdrawal agreement's written is that it's open-ended. The only way the ERG group will vote for an extension of Article 50 is if there's a legally binding end to the backstop, giving the UK another opportunity at some point to threaten to leave the EU on its terms. So, and the backstop itself is a violation of all sorts of treaties because it imposes on Northern Ireland EU's rules and that they don't have any control over. Because technically they're no longer a part of the EU, but they're still governed by the EU. And that's fundamentally against the British Constitution, the Good Friday Agreement, between all of it. It's all insane. Standard Dev's here to ask about Basel III. I brought it up today. I brought it up yesterday, Basel III, in my article for Money and Markets, when I got about halfway through riffing on a blog post about that on my for my blog this afternoon. I didn't get it finished. I'm going to try and finish it in the morning before I go out. And Basel III, this is what I think they're most scared about, is that Basel III, the new banking rules are going to go into effect at the end of March. Basel III is the new set of banking rules that go into effect, and it's going to radically alter the structure of what is and is not capital, considered capital for calculating what used to be called CAR, the capital adequacy ratio. Now is called something like, it's called net sufficient liquidity position or something. It doesn't really matter. It's basically the same thing. It's capital adequacy ratio. And definitions of capital are changing completely. The levels of reserves that you have to have, the amount of tier 1 capital you're allowed to have is rising. And so the ECB came out yesterday and said, and punted, said, well, growth is going to suck and inflation is going to suck, and we're going to keep interest rates negative until well past Mario Draghi's term is up in October. He's kicking the can past the end of his term. He's leaving the new ECB president to come in, a new TLTRO program, which, by the way, won't go into effect until after the old loans, which are currently being used by the banks as reserves. Well, that's going to expire in June, and the new program doesn't start up until October. There's a 3 month, there's a whole quarter of funding where these guys are all going to be without enough capital. It's already starting. People are already, we saw yesterday's response to Draghi's statement and his new plan. Liquidity's drying up. The euro got crushed. Everybody's dumping in the freaking government bonds left and freaking right, desperate to try and to get enough tier 1 capital together in order to deal with Basel III. And then the Brits are going to leave 2 days before the new Basel III rules come into place. They never expected this to happen. They always expected to be able to betray Brexit. Yes, this is all related to the legal status of the City of London after Brexit. But again, which I will be honest with you, I'm not completely, I will not say I understand all of the City of London stuff. What's the word I'm looking for? Thoroughly. I would be out over my skis to say I understand it completely. Okay. Basel III will not actually rate physical gold at face value. It will be 85%. From what I understand, I've read multiple conflicting reports about this. The last thing I read said 85%, up from 50%. Right. Under Basel II rules, gold was a tier 3 capital asset. It was a 50% haircut, meaning that if you as a bank had $200 million worth of gold on your balance sheet, well, you can only use it as $100 million worth of reserves for calculating your CAR. Now it'll be 85%. That'll be, say, $170 million. Okay, if Mark Bogosian doesn't understand what's going to happen with City of London, then I don't feel bad about not knowing, since Mark's a pro and I'm an amateur. So, but just know that there's a lot of worry about the ability. A lot of it has to do just with the legal status of the contracts, of the derivative contracts, and all this is also the desire. City of London does not want to lose the business from European brokers. They don't want to lose that business. And already they're worried that there's going to have to be a split of those two businesses. In effect, there's two businesses. What now is all handled through City of London for all of Europe, that's going to change. And some of that business is going to move to Frankfurt. And fine. But they've already cut deals that the clearinghouses are all going to function for at least a year. And here's the other thing. Nothing has to change dramatically on March the 29th. If the bad guys would just give the fuck up and get over it, you've lost, you're not going to win, and start doing the people's work and start working in your own best interest, which is to say, now start the process of sending the documents back and forth so that they can invoke GATT Chapter 24, which will allow the Brits and the UK and the EU to trade as if nothing had changed for the next year, as long as they make a good faith effort to show that they're working towards a free trade agreement. That's on the table. Theresa May won't bring this up. Philip Hammond won't bring it up. Nigel Farage brings it up every day. The Bruce Group brings it up every day. This is all very possible. There does not have to be any changes whatsoever. If the EU and the UK would exchange a couple of freaking pieces of paper, stamp them, ratify them, and move on, they'd have a year to not even change anything. At that point, no one will set up new tariffs. No one will change the rules at all. So what I found interesting, so none of this has to happen. This is all a manufactured crisis. Every bit of it. And everyone and every bit of it can be avoided, but they don't want to avoid it. They're trying to make this more complicated than it is. They want it to be more complicated than it is. They want it to be painful. They got Italy standing over there in a corner going, we're next. Everybody is corrupt. We live in times, North on 60, it says that British politicians, military intelligence, and elites are just so corrupt it's disgusting. Not that the US is any better. Not that Germany's any better. Not that France is any better. Not, frankly, is that Italy is any better, except that now they've got Salvini and Di Maio in charge. Okay? The whole system is corrupt. This is what happens when you institute system after system after system that is fundamentally at its core corrupt. When the money is corrupt, it corrupts everything. It corrupts everybody's incentives. It corrupts everybody's agendas. It allows for tremendous amount of influence peddling at levels that would never be sustainable. Stoyanovich asked me, all the EU banks are neck deep in supposedly laundering Russian money. Any ideas what's going on with that? Well, the interesting part about it is that the European Commission tried to shake down the Americans over this very issue by issuing a report that says all of these banks and all of these territories, including 4 U.S. territories, the Guam, Samoa, all the little protectorates, the Bahamas, not the Bahamas, the Virgin Islands, all guilty of money laundering, not being up to speed. The Americans came in and told them to quash that, and the European Parliament voted that down and did refuse to ratify that report. Right, until we change the way money works, we change nothing. Exactly right, Rusty Enrico. I agree with you. A corrupt money begets a corrupt society. This is kind of axiom 1 of Gold, Goats, and Guns. So, excuse me. So I think a lot of the neck deep in laundering Russian money has to do with the Americans, and I think it's the Americans putting pressure, i.e. through Browder and all of the people that are associated or in that circle, trying to, at this point, shake everybody down to say, look, you better make this work or we're going to destroy you all. Some of us are too unruly to be governed. Yep. So for excuse me. So going forward here, it's really fascinating to watch how this plays out, because you have to remember that they're engaged in all of these operations across Europe. trying to make, trying to get Viktor Orban to heal, trying to get Salvini in Italy to heal, trying to cobble together another coalition eventually in Spain that will work. Sweden, same thing. They just, the Swedish elections were non-committal. We wound up with the same government as we had before. How did that happen? We know how that happened. Okay? These are all rearguard actions. These are all defensive maneuvers trying to protect Fortress EU. Not working. Every one of these little battles they win, they lose the war. So what we're looking at going forward here is no matter what happens, the Brits are going to win over the EU. The withdrawal agreement will get revoked at some point. Because even if this thing gets voted in as an act of parliament, another parliament can always ditch it later on. Possible. Because after this happens, there will be a general election. One way or the other. And at that point, heaven help the people who voted for the withdrawal agreement. Heaven help the people who betray Brexit like this. The British people voted to get out. They're more committed to getting out now than they ever were. And as I talked about yesterday, Owen Patterson did the study, did the work. 73 of the first 100 seats Labour needs to win in a general election are all hard leave. Labour will never win an election in Britain ever again if they betray Brexit here. This is exactly what happens when the shit hits the fan, Joe Season. You have to pay the political price eventually. Eventually, you do. Standard Dev, you're right. You have to eventually pay the political price. And the people who are willing to be vilified, who are willing to be hated, who are willing to stand there and be called racist and sexist and this and that and everything else, while all these people, these horrible, venal, disgusting, corrupted, on the take people hurl every epithet at them imaginable. And you just look at them and you go, get angry all you want, James O'Brien and the BBC and all these other fucking assholes. You're going to lose. And you can go to your graves being bitter about it, but when the average British citizen at this point is looking at what's happening in Europe and saying, we don't want any part of this. Every day, there's another riot in France. There's another revolt being put down in Spain. There's another Eurosceptic winning an election in Estonia or Italy or Hungary or Bulgaria. All of these people, all of them. Sorry, a friend of mine just sent me a text. And and they're all looking at this going, why the hell do we want to be a part of these people? If Mario Draghi just came out and said 9 years worth of outrageous monetary policy, Eurozone growth is still shit, when everybody knows that the whole thing is all about Germany's export economy collapsing. The best thing that can happen to all of them at this point is to allow the euro to drop by 30%. But if the euro drops by 30%, carry trades around the world explode. Explode. And rates rise like you wouldn't believe, and the whole system comes crashing down. We're not just talking Deutsche Bank here and Commerzbank. We're talking all of them. And if you think the American banks are going to get out of this unscathed, you're nuts. You think the Hong Kong banks are going to get out of this unscathed, you're nuts. You think the Japanese banks are going to get out of this unscathed, you're nuts. At a certain level, they know that that this is the catalyst for sovereign debt crisis. But at the same time, you can't avoid the sovereign debt crisis. It's here. 8 years worth of ridiculous monetary policy, and we're just as bad, if not worse, than we ever were. Draghi tries to stop supporting the European sovereign debt market for 60 days and immediately has to turn around and support it right all over again. So it's an insane situation, and everybody knows it. And I'm telling you, they don't have a plan B. They don't have some great master plan. They might have an Agenda 21 and all this other shit, but at the end of the day, man, I'm telling you, these people are not that freaking smart. They're not that much in control. Half of them are fighting each other. They're not all in cahoots with one another. I got news for you. I go back to what one of my commenters on my blog told me the other day. I was at Davos. I worked for these people. They all left on Sunday. They all left after the last panel discussion. Nobody stayed around for dinner. They all left. It was a morgue. You know why everybody was there? Because they were all scared. So we're there. We're here. May's just panicked. And it's all pointing right now at the unfolding of this. Now, they may be able to get out of this for 2, 3, 4 months. Maybe they could. Possible. May even be probable. But eventually the whole thing collapses. North on 60 says, did you see Pence trying to force Germany to harass Russia with naval vessels instead of carrying out his own insanity with his own damn ship? Of course I saw it. I didn't even have a chance. I mean, at a certain point, I'm at the point now where I'm like, I got a better one for you. 3 days ago, there were reports of special forces officers in Colombia, U.S. 3 days later, the Venezuelan power grid goes out. Now we got Marco Rubio live tweeting the fucking thing, and John Bolton blaming it all on socialism. Are you people kidding? What does a post-EU Britain look like? A fuckload better than a current Britain. The pound will devalue by 20%. Everybody will freak out. Oh my God, it'll be good. All the freaking debt drops by 20%. Everything will be fine. The pound will drop by 20%. Everything, and at that point they become far less tied. It becomes a far more advantageous situation for them in every way. Pound is too strong relative to Britain's manufacturing base and its labor base. It's too strong. Pound needs to devalue, needs to drop. It's going to drop either way. It's either going to be tied to the euro, which is going to sink like a rock, or it's going to be on its own. It's going to drop, and it's going to be able to drop independently. What you don't understand is that the pound may drop by 20%, but the euro will drop by 30%. Which will realign Britain with the rest of the world. Nobody is stronger than markets. Every market manipulator eventually fails. Always. So, you have to, if you believe yourself to be any kind of free marketeer, you believe in even in managed capitalism or some third way capitalism bullshit or whatever, even if you believe in any of that stuff, then you cannot believe in completely manipulated markets. You can believe in markets that are manipulated in the direction of the trend, but not against the trend indefinitely. Everything is cyclic. Everything. Malinvestment builds up within the economy, and eventually the malinvestment has to be liquidated. You can paper that over by pulling production in from the future through debt, but eventually you run up against debt saturation, where the amount of debt it takes to continue to goose GDP starts to rise exponentially, which is where we are right now, and then eventually rates have to rise and everything collapses. At some point, deflation will take over, will destroy funny money, will destroy credit left and right, and asset valuations will drop like a rock. And guess who wins when asset values drop like a rock? People who don't own assets. Right now, who doesn't own assets? You, me, everybody listening to my voice. Guess who owns all the assets? All the people trying to stop Brexit. If we own our houses, we own them. O-W apostrophe N, as in we owe on them. How many of you don't have a mortgage? I paid mine off. And if you don't have a mortgage, then you pay rent. Other than your tax bill and your insurance bill, you own your property. Right? Not to say I don't have any debt, but I own my mortgage. I own my house. Now, but stock ownership in this country, relatively speaking, is relative to per capita wealth is minuscule. Assets are owned. We keep talking about all the wealth inequality. The system creates the wealth inequality. Wealth inequality is a real thing. The division of labor, as it expands, and deflation is just another way of saying that it's a contraction of the division of labor. But as the division of labor expands, prices are supposed to drop. Arbitrage is supposed to be ground out. Profit is supposed to be driven down to a minimum. That's what drives innovation. It's the driving of profit down to zero through competition and through innovation through competition is what drives profit, which is arbitrage, to zero. And innovation is then those profits have to be invested in the next generation, next version of that product in order to maintain margins. This is how growth companies, this is what they do. This is what companies are supposed to do. This is how it works. Drives innovation. It's how Intel has gone from 40 nanometer, 90 nanometer CPUs to 7 nanometer CPUs. Tom, if we start to get deflation, we've had deflation for 10 years, El Vicaro. Since Lehman Brothers, we've been in a deflationary environment. All they've done since then is printed shit tons of money to create nominal GDP growth, not real GDP growth. We're not going to get whipsawed into hyperinflation until confidence is lost in the entire system. And I don't know that we're going to see hyperinflation in the United States, but I certainly think we're going to see even more hyperinflation in emerging markets. We're definitely going to see something akin to that in places like Japan and Europe. Depends on where you live, Andreas Walsh. He says, I imagine people pay more in homeowners taxes, property taxes than you pay in rent, even if they have their mortgage paid off. It's possible, not me. I can tell you that I don't. Ain't no way you're living taxes and insurance on my property of $200 a month. If you're living for less than $200 a month in rent, unless you're living in someplace like Cambodia or, Mexico. Yeah, even Mexico, you can't live for $200 a month. Not any place safe. I know, I've looked. It depends on where you live. I'm talking about in the United States. No, it's not possible. It's almost impossible to live for $200 a month unless you're living in your parents' basement, or you have your mortgage paid off. But I live in Florida. I live in rural. People ask me why I live in rural North Florida. Like, why me? Why would I, of all people, live in rural North Florida? I'm allergic to taxes. But New Jersey's horrible. I'm allergic to taxes. I think taxes are theft, and I want to pay as few of them as possible. There's a reason why I agree, El Vaquero, the $200. It's not tax. It's only $100 a month in taxes. It's $100 a month in insurance, taxes and insurance. I still pay. I still have homeowners insurance. I like my homeowners insurance. Money is absolutely, Rexman, you're absolutely wrong about that. You stick with me long enough, and I'll explain to you that money was man's greatest invention. Now, we've corrupted money. We live in an age of corrupted money. But money is a fantastic idea. Money is the thing that liquefies trade between people. It's the thing that it's the thing that makes it so much easier for you to find your place in the division of labor, and for me to find my place in the division of labor. It's not just an interesting idea, it's a necessity. I'm fond of saying that in 6 days God created the world, metaphorically speaking. On the seventh day he rested, and on the eighth day man created money so he can get shit done. So, is the income tax in the United States technically illegal? Yes. Do you pay it? Yes. I am jealous of you, Mark Bogosian, because property tax, I also feel, is the original sin of government, right? There's no place to live where you're not being taxed. But without money, how do you think you think a barter economy is going to produce an iPhone? If you tell me that you don't think we don't need iPhones or we don't need internet, then why are you here using the internet? Think a barter economy would have created the internet? Think a barter economy would have created the book? Let's just get back down to brass tacks. Do you think the barter economy would have produced anything more than a subsistence lifestyle? How do you invest? How do you pool resources to build large projects like, I don't know, a building bigger than a lean-to or a small cabin, and anything other than the barter economy? When you have to do everything yourself, go look at those guys that do the primitive building channel or the primitive building channel on YouTube. That's what a life without money looks like. Now, those guys are cool, and I like watching their videos. I sit there and watch them while my wife watches them. I sit over her shoulder and watch that stuff all the time. It's great. They build rocket stoves, and they build bricks, and they build all sorts of cool things. It's great, fantastic. I think it's cool. It's fun. I've even entertained doing shit like that. I've spent some of my time doing crap like that. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. Do you think a barter economy could ever build anything more powerful than that? You're absolutely out of your mind. Society was built. The society we have today, money was an absolute necessity. And it was the first thing we were going to invent in order to be able to coordinate across hundreds of people or thousands of people or even just tens of people. At some point, barter's not good enough. Because all money is the thing that everybody is willing to value, is willing to hold as a placeholder, as a placeholder between the thing that they sold and the thing they're about to buy. That's all money is. It's a placeholder. Andreas Wall says, when I lived in South America, people thought the idea of property taxes was comical. How that varies from country to country, I don't know. It all depends on how deeply rooted Marxism has become in your culture. And I'm not gonna, and I don't make any bones about that. The idea of paying property tax as a way to fund local government is insane. I sincerely do not believe that there is a state in the United States that does not have property tax. I could be wrong about that. Is it Nevada? Today, all money is debt. Not to that is. I just want to, when you say things like money is an interesting concept, okay, I have to take that at face value, okay. And when I hear that, it's going to set off every bell in my head because I can't help myself. Yes, today the money that is issued today is based on debt. It's a horrible idea. It's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's wrong. Money shouldn't be based on debt. It doesn't need to be based on debt. We don't have money today. We have credit. We have nothing but credit. And credit is the least stable form of money. It's money, but it's a very unstable version of it. It's easily manipulated and should not exist. But it does. You know, credit's necessary at times just to coordinate across time when there's a dearth of money in a particular place at a particular time. That's what credit's for. There's nothing wrong with credit, but the whole system can't be based on it. So, but money is very, very important, without a doubt. There's no way of getting around the barter. There's no way of getting around the limitation of the barter economy. When you listen to these socialists talk, and they think we can do away with things like money, or we can just print unlimited quantities of it, or whatever, they're completely Looney Tunes. They don't understand the first thing about human behavior or human action. They don't. And it makes me sad. It makes me sick to my stomach because, you know, I've read Marx. Read it. I agree with a lot of his criticisms. I don't agree with his conclusions. 99.9% of people who tell you that a free market economy would not work have never read Mises, read Rothbard, read Hayek, and even Hayek's not even all that. Never read Holzman or Hoppe or any of these guys. Never read Menger, for fuck's sake. They don't even know where a coherent theory of value came from. No idea what they're even fucking talking about. They don't even know the arguments for a free market in money and all property. They don't even understand the argument. They've never even read it so that they can then refute it. They just ad hominem it and say it's not possible. This is because we've always lived under tyranny doesn't mean that tyranny is the only way for us to live. Retarded. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to use that word. Because I might offend a snowflake or two. Good night, Standard Dev. Good talking to you as always. Happy wife, happy life, so go have dinner. Bastiat is pretty awesome as well. I agree. But I mean, if you're a committed Marxist, you should read Mises. Because he's your biggest critic. So you should read your biggest critic. Just throw your head in the sand and just say, oh, and then throw your head in the sand. I don't need to. Well, then fine, fuck you. Then continue to be a stupid Marxist and make bad arguments about why things don't work. Or worse, go off into definitional la-la land, semantic, into semantic la-la land, and try and negate the concept that anything has any meaning whatsoever so that you can justify pointing guns at people and taking their shit. That's really what it comes down to. That's all they're doing. And then you have the fantasists who say, well, we don't really have to suffer. We can have a world of plenty. Look, the world is plentiful. Like, yeah, how are you going to turn what the world gives you into something useful? It's what we do every day. Even the former Greenpeace guy just called it all a scam. Mark Bogosian. Definition, Marxist. Someone who believes in Marx. Anti-Marxist. Someone who has actually read Marx. Comment of the evening. Without a doubt. Comment of the evening. Rocket Man just got back from his uncle's farm in Iowa. I know this, having talked to him off camera. Says that his uncle who raises sheep in rural Iowa thinks goats are evil. I'm not going to argue with you. I just don't like goats. They're not evil. They're just trifling is the word my mother-in-law would use. Good Ohio hillbilly that she is. Trifling. That's the best word. The best way to describe goats. They're their own person. All of them. Even the rock stupid ones. And that little girl though, that I've she's 8. We're just weaning the 2 babies that we had a couple months ago. And the boy is clever as shit. He's like finding all the holes in the fence to get back into the yard. He roots around. He looks for things. He's clever. He's a smart goat. The other girl is just fucking rock stupid. She just stands there and cries. Camille tells me the story the other day of a cat she used to have that used to whine to be let in at the screen door. To be let in, and as she'd open up the screen door, the cat would back up with the screen door and then still whine that she couldn't get through the screen door even though it was open. Well, that little goat's about as dumb. So Mises, M-I-S-E-S. I'll spell that. Hold on. To read, it's Ludwig. Sorry, hold on. You can go to Mises.org as well, MISES.org. There's all sorts of stuff. You can get all that stuff for free. You get it all for free at Mises.org. The whole canon. You should still want a goat herd. If you've got the land and you've got the time and you're willing to be tied to it, goats are awesome. They're all full of personality. They're a pain in the ass. You buy dairy goats, they're born looking for a place to die. You gotta be really hard. You gotta work really hard not to kill them. Just they put all their energy into their milk, not into their own survival. But I don't know. Just kind of used to them now. Would be really weird to walk outside and not have 6 animals go, ah! Pet me! Marxist Goats would be a good band name. No. Michelle's Penis. That's a good band name. Madhow's Adam's Apple. That's a good band name. What did I think about Moon of Alabama's article about Germany, about Trump trying to shake Germany and Japan down for the privilege to be defended by us when they want us to fucking leave? I think Bernard had it right. I just haven't had a chance to write it. There's so much stuff to write about it. I could literally write 12 blog posts a day and then my fingers would fall off and my brain would melt about all of this stuff. I just can't be that outraged anymore. Libertarianism is the only thing that is scalable. Libertarianism is what we do when we're not ditching government. The non-aggression principle is what we do. Except for when we enshrine people's worst instincts in these organizations we call government, and then they steal from us, and we're still able to get shit done in spite of them stealing from us. Hillary Zuma. Point, Brett Harris. Point. Understand that All the things that we libertarians talk about in the theoretic already exist every day. Everything good that happens in the world is voluntary. The voluntary society, which is all we're really talking about, the voluntary society is the goal. And it doesn't matter if you think that we can get there or not. You should still argue for the goal, because that goal, nobody deprecates anybody else. Is it a little utopian? Of course it is. Are we going to reach it? Absolutely not. Is there going to be times when we're going to violate our own oaths? Yes. Because you have to understand that at a certain level, everybody is going to make a mistake at some point. Everybody is going to use force to get what they want. If you don't understand that you're capable of doing that, as well as everybody else around you, if you see it in everybody else and deny it for yourself, you're a fucking Marxist. Because that's what Marxists are. At their core, they're people who've rejected the idea they're ideologically possessed. It doesn't matter. They're all utopian fantasists. This idea that we never have to be in conflict with one another is nonsense. We are going to be in conflict with one another. And we all have the capacity for malevolent, vile, evil behavior. Every one of us. And if you say no, you're fooling yourself. Knowing that and accepting that, that's when you can become a whole person. That's when you grow up. And that's when you realize that while I may have my philosophy and I may have my principles, I may have my standards, I can't even live up to them all the time. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Let he who lives in a glass house throw the first stone, right? I mean, come on. You aspire to those things. You aspire to be the best person you can be at all times. To minimize the moments in your life when you deprecate somebody else, when you take from them or utilize a system that you know is built on force. You do your best. And if you do that with the best of intentions, understanding that when push comes to shove and you're starving to death, you're going to knock some guy over the head who's trying to get to the last piece of meat. You just have to know that you're going to do that. You have to know that when you're starving, you may not ever want to shoot an animal, but I got news for you. When you're starving, you're going to shoot an animal. Better to do it now. Better to learn how to raise your own animals and learn how to process and kill and process your own animals for your own consumption. And understand where they come from and what it takes to get to that state. And then know that you, one, are capable of it, and two, have respect for the process. That now you're going to do it as little as possible. I'd be happy with any of those. I'd be happy with the Constitution. It'd be good. I'd be happy with that. Give me that. Let's go back to something even. I'll be happy to get back to something akin to pre-1913. Post-Civil War shit. And the Civil War was terrible. Let's do the big one. Let's reject Marxism in all its forms. Let's reject collectivism in all its forms. Not to say that you're not going to build communities. You're not going to have law and all that other stuff. Of course you are. So how is it going to be adjudicated? How is it going to be organized? Start there. And clean up and as Jordan Peterson says very succinctly, clean your own room. I've done my level best in my life. I'm not saying I'm very good at it, but I've done my level best to try and remove as many instances where I interact with the state as possible. I can't get rid of all of it. I can't stop John Bolton from running an operation to plunge the entire country of Venezuela into darkness so that he can steal their oil. I can complain about it. I can make everybody understand, as many people as possible understand that it's wrong and I don't want it done in my name anymore. But it's the best I can do. Maybe I can do more than that. I don't know. You tell me. What can we do? Brett Harris spends his entire day on Twitter trying to explain to everybody how important it is to understand why Bill Browder is the biggest rat fuck son of a bitch on the planet. Is he having an effect? I think so. Is it his life's work? I don't know. Seems like it to me. As Rothbard said, repeal the 20th century. I'm good with that. That's right. All right, guys, we're at an hour. I've got other work to do and other places to be. I just know you guys are doing good work, Brett. You, Lucy, Lee, and all the rest of you. I just know you're doing good work. It's very impressive what you guys do. And you have my respect. What else am I going to say? Any other questions before I go? But I think this is pretty much done. I'm going to try and get something out on Sunday. I know Browder's accusing Prince Charles. This thing is so big that they have to try and take everybody down to keep them and shut them up. And that's what's going on. This thing's so big, it's not funny. I was talking to Lee about it this morning on Fault Lines. Unbelievable. All right, guys, I'm gonna go. You guys take care. You have a great evening. Have a great weekend. I may be back before Sunday. I've got the newsletter to get out. I've got day gaming with my friends tomorrow. Not going to be around very much. You guys take care. Be well. Keep your stick on the ice.